everybody knows this, but I dropped out of preschool. I remember my aunt, my grandmother dropped me off, and I literally remember screaming bloody murder every day for a week until Miss Lori, the innocent little happy preschool teacher, was ready to strangle me. And looking back, I think it's possible I might have had some attachment issues. But honestly, what do you really learn in preschool anyway? While other kids were playing with blocks and having snack time, I was at my grandmother's house, actually getting somewhere in life. I was preparing for my future. At 4, I was an excellent beautician. Other kids had Barbies to practice on. I had my grandmother. It's really a wonder she isn't bald, frankly, because she has about 2 inches of hair, and I'd give her my most special treatment. Barrettes, hair ties, hair gel, curlers, they were a lot of fun to stuck in there. Although I was already apprenticing for beauty school, I of course had my jewelry career to fall back on. After all, I am Pat Wood's granddaughter. I'd sit on her lap for hours and pick up tips on how to get people to buy things they absolutely don't need.
No one is a better teacher.
Yeah. It didn't matter who you were. She would sell you jewelry. Family members, cousin Bev, neighbors, and politely some very, very interesting friends of hers that she picked up over the years. My dad. It was completely amazing. She sold everyone jewelry. So although I might have missed out on some socializing skills, I knew even at 4, skipping preschool was the best thing I could do for my future. I was set. Did I mention I'm 21? I don't have a real job. I don't sell jewelry.
You still have a grandmother.
And you're back from Florida, too.
Yeah. My grandmother still has a decently serious addiction to the home shopping network when I was younger, which worked out, as I'm sure you can all imagine, amazingly well for me. I got all sorts of nifty things you couldn't buy in stores. My mini-sized recliner, actually reclined. My little couch folded out into a bed. And I think when I was about 5, I got my anatomically correct twin dolls for Christmas. I think she picked them out from QVC, and the whole family was thrilled, especially my dad and my grandfather. It's most likely her fault that before I turned 6, Robin was stuck answering my multitudes of questions about where babies actually come from. My dad had just taken the training wheels off my bike, so I was probably about 7, and my grandmother was watching me, which meant I was about allowed to ride my house from in front of her house, basically nowhere. Might get kidnapped or murdered. So before I went outside, she just yelled at me, "Put on your helmet, put on your knee pads." You know how she is. So naturally I ignored her. And I fell. And I remember I fell directly in front of her house, and I was crying. So I started wobbling up the driveway like some sort of weird movie. She just comes flying out of the house. And I mean, every kid falls off their bike, and every kid gets those little scrapes on their knees, and they cry. And if you'd seen the scene, you would have thought I died. She was crying and screaming, "Oh my God, Nikki, I told you to put on your knee pads. I just knew something like this would happen." I honestly can't even come close to replicating the voice she had going on. But really, it wasn't even the voice, it was the package deal. The way she practically threw me over her shoulder and tossed me on the counter. How she started sweating and fanning herself. And pouring hydrogen peroxide all over me before I could speak out a protest. All I really needed was a few Band-Aids, and I'm sure I would have been fine. But I remember even thinking in my little kid head, the way she was acting, if I was ever going to be able to ride my bike again, or if the cuts I had were just too bad. Anyways, it was only minutes with all the racket we had made before Millie and Dutch came. We were sitting through the front door. Thankfully, Dutch was able to calm her down. He probably slipped her a Valium one. I could always get away with murder. It was fantastic. I never did anything wrong, which was always kind of fun. And
You're a perfect angel.
If my mean father unjustly accused me of being a brat, my grandmother would immediately remind him just how saintly I was. And if that didn't work, if he was, determined, she would just begin insisting I was getting sick. In my grandmother's book, the only reason one of her grandchildren would misbehave is if they were coming down with some sort of illness.
That's true.
And the best part about this move was she would immediately turn it back around with my dad. "Why haven't you taken her to see the doctor yet?" she would say.